Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Jake the Genealogist, and today we're going to be going over 5 pairs of presidential cousins you might not have known about. The first on our list is Zachary Taylor and James Madison, who are second cousins. Okay, so we start with James Madison, the 4th President of the United States, born in 1751 and died in 1836. And from him we move on to his father, who was Colonel James Madison, from the Continental Army, born in 1723 and died in 1801. And from him we move on to his mother, Frances Madison, James Madison's paternal grandmother. Now, she was born in 1700 and died in 1761. And her last name happened to be Taylor. And her father's name was actually James Taylor, who was actually part of the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe Expedition. Francis's brother was Zachary Taylor Sr., who is the paternal grandfather of Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States. And so he lived from 1707 to 1768. And his son was Richard Lee Taylor, who was a lieutenant colonel in the Continental Army during the Revolutionary War, and he was born in 1744 and died in 1829. And finally, we get to the 12th President, Zachary Taylor, who was born in 1784 and died in 1850. And as mentioned before, Madison and Taylor were second cousins, because their grandparents happened to be siblings. It is the closest cousin relationship between two presidents. So now we move on to Martin Van Buren and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who are third cousins 4 times removed. Martin Van Buren was the 8th President of the United States. He was born in 1782 and died in 1862. We move on to his father, Abraham Murchison Van Buren, who was born in 1737 and died in 1817, and then for him to his mother, Dirkje van Alstine. We trace it further for her mother, Mariette Matoisse van Duizen. Unfortunately, I don't have any documents or photos for this part of the tree, but moving along, Mariette had a sister named Trintje Benson, and she had a son named Robert Benson. And then he had a daughter named Catherine Hoffman. From her, we move on to her daughter, Cornelia. Now, she had a son named James Jacobus Roosevelt, who was born in 1760 and died in 1847. We move down from there onto Dr. Isaac Daniel Roosevelt, who was Franklin D's paternal grandfather, and he was born in 1790 and died in 1863. We move on to his son, James Roosevelt, who was Franklin's father. He was born in 1828 and died in 1900. Here he is in a photo from 1895 with his son. And finally, we get to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States. He was born in 1882 and died in 1945. So that is how Martin Van Buren is related to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Unfortunately, I couldn't find too many photos or documentary evidence of some of the earlier generations in their tree. So now we move on to John Tyler and William Henry Harrison, who were 4th cousins once removed. We start with John Tyler, who is the 10th President of the United States. He was born in 1790 and died in 1862. His mother was Mary Merritt Armistead, who tragically passed away from a stroke when Tyler was just 7 years old. She was born in 1761 and died in 1797. It moves further up the line to Mary's father, Robert Booth Armistead, who was born in 1747 and died in 1766. It moves further to his father, Captain Ellison Armistead, who was born in 1700 and died in 1757. To his father, Robert Armistead, born in 1665 and died in 1742. And finally, to his father, Captain Anthony Armistead, born in 1645 and died in 1726. Anthony had a brother, and his name was John Armistead, who was a colonel. And he was born in 1635 and died in 1698. He actually was part of the Governor's Council of Virginia, and twice represented Gloucester in the House of Burgesses before he was appointed. We moved down to his daughter, Elizabeth Churchill, and then her daughter, another Elizabeth Churchill, William Henry Harrison's maternal grandmother, born in 1710 and died in 1779. We get down to William Henry Harrison's mother, Elizabeth Harrison, who was born in 1730 and died in 1792. Harrison's father, fun fact, was actually one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. And now we finally go to the 9th President of the United States, William Henry Harrison, born in 1773 and died in 1841. He is famous for having been in office for only 32 days before succumbing to pneumonia. So that is how John Tyler is fourth cousins once removed with William Henry Harrison. So now we're moving on to the second to last one, which will be a very brief one, and that is between William Henry Harrison and Benjamin Harrison. So, we start with William Henry Harrison. I've already explained him, so moving on. We move on to his son, John Scott Harrison, who was born in 1804 and died in 1878. And he married Elizabeth Ramsay Harrison. He was elected as a Whig to the House of Representatives in 1852 and later re-elected as an oppositionist in 1854. And he served from 1853 to 1857. And finally, we get to the 23rd President of the United States, Benjamin Harrison, who was born in 1833 and died in 1901. And that is the short but simple explanation of how William Henry Harrison is related to Benjamin Harrison. The final one we're going to be doing today is between Teddy Roosevelt and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who were fifth cousins. Theodore, also known as Teddy Roosevelt, was born in 1858. He was the 26th President of the United States, and he died in 1919. And then we embark on a long journey up the Roosevelt family, starting with Theodore's father, also Theodore Roosevelt Sr., who was born in 1831 and died in 1878, up to his father, Cornelius Van Schack Roosevelt, who was born in 1794 and died in 1871, to his father, James Jacobus Roosevelt, who was born in 1759 and died in 1840, continuing with his father, Jacobus Roosevelt, who was born in 1724 and died in 1777, up to his father, Johannes Roosevelt, who was born in 1689 and died in 1750. And Johannes had a brother, once again bearing the name of Jacobus, who was born in 1692 and died in 1776. And then his son, Isaac Roosevelt Sr., born in 1726 and died in 1794, who was a politician. And then, since I've already gone over these, we can zoom through them. So we go from Jacobus Roosevelt to Isaac Daniel Roosevelt to James Roosevelt, and finally to the president himself, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you would like to see some kind of part 2, please comment down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys all later.